What most people think.
As we all know, the EU are a little bit late approving their vaccine, you know, in the same way that Labour were a bit late realising that Jeremy Corbyn was a fucking liability. And then they spent the best part of last week in a row with AstraZeneca, which you haven't heard of them. They are actually like a big pharma company. It sort of sounds like a 5-door hatchback for the family, doesn't it? Like the new AstraZeneca with cup holders.
What most people think.
Ursula von der Leyen last summer said that, you know, the last thing we really want to see is vaccine nationalism. Suddenly the EU start throwing their weight around and they're talking about jumping the queue. Now, if there's one way to unite most of the country, Remain or Leave, in Britain, it's by not respecting the protocol of queuing. That is a big, you know, I don't know where you're watching or listening to this from, but that is a big cultural issue for us. I mean, the only way that you could unite the country in a similar way is if you started making tea in the fucking microwave or something.
What most people think.
So the EU then spent a few days sabre rattling, but there were still people defending them, you know, and still people who didn't seem to want the comparative charts of how the UK was doing against the EU brought out. You know, they were saying, well, it's not a competition, isn't it? Well, then why the other week were you trotting out the fact that Britain was currently worst in the table of deaths per million? I mean, yeah, if you want to put a positive on it, we were top. It's just not necessarily a great league to be out ahead of. And then we get to Friday. Okay, we get to Friday afternoon of last week. What was it? The 29th of January, that fateful day when the mask slipped, didn't it? Something just broke. I don't know what happened on Friday. Maybe they'd started drinking early. I don't know. Maybe Ursula von der Leyen started early on the Grey Goose, but they have some meeting. And then the upshot of that is that she wants to activate Order 66. I mean, a hard border on Ireland. Who's going to really notice? So some of her advisors, they must be going, Ursula, look, this is not, you know, doesn't feel good. Yeah, hey, fuck you lot, all right? I'm not the head of the EU for nothing. Yeah, although no one really knows, you know, exactly how I became the head of the EU. But, you know, hey, if the people don't like it, they can vote me out. And they're like, actually, they can't, Ursula. That's actually one of the biggest problems with the EU for many people is the sort of democratic deficit and the actual difficulty of getting rid of anyone or indeed knowing who the fuck anyone else is.
What most people think.
Even the Remainers are in shock now. James O'Brien fucking tumbleweeds on his Twitter feed. You know, they get accused of vaccine nationalism by the WHO. The Archbishop of Canterbury is weighing in. Justin Welby. Isn't anyone else think Justin is just a really weird name for an Archbishop of Canterbury? It just sounds like some kid that worked at Foot Locker got like a seriously big promotion.
What most people think.
And then we see something that we have almost never seen, which is a public U-turn from the EU. An EU turn. And what was interesting, I thought, in the reaction to it, was for a lot of people, to them, it was genuinely the first evidence they'd ever seen that the EU could act like selfish, fucking spoiled pricks. You know what I mean? They were like, oh, this is so weird. I'm just finding it hard to calibrate that in this instance, my country weren't the dicks. I mean, this organisation are notoriously bad in a crisis, right? And I think that there's a reason for that. It's because that they're largely separated, aren't they, from the electoral consequences of their actions. Forget Barnier, you know, forget Papa and fucking Nicole, Ursula von der Leyen. Tell me of that, what is it, 15-person strong commission? Just so, who's the Minister for Agriculture? You know, a lot of people don't know what the European Commission or who it's comprised of how you get rid of, you know, how you get rid of the senior people.
What most people think.
At least in Britain, though, we roughly know who a few pricks are. We like, there's that Genrip bloke, I know who Hancock is, Priti Patel, Kwasi. You know, it's quite useful to have people on your telly because then you know who you're angry with and who you need to get rid of. Going forward, could we just have a little bit of perspective that the EU are a political and economic body that act sometimes aggressively in their own self-interest, and they're not run by loads of little Dumbledores and Gandalfs trying to defeat the evil fucking wizard Sauron?
What most people think.
I mean, were they not saying for 4 years that one of their biggest priorities in the whole Brexit negotiations was to not have a hard border on the on the island of Ireland? I mean, this isn't the first time they've acted like this. I mean, you look at the Lisbon Treaty, you know, the Tony Soprano level shit they pulled on countries that weren't fully enamoured with that. You know, the migrant crisis, Greece. You just think, why did you not think that the EU would ever act like this? You know, they say, oh, it's just a trading block. That's what we were told for so long. It's just a trading block. Well, you know, in Star Wars Phantom Menace, so was the Trade Federation, right? And those fuckers invaded Naboo.
What most people think.
And then even then, there was people saying we should go and help the EU. You know, this is you know we are their neighbours. Shouldn't we be helping them out? And I thought, you know, that's a noble sentiment. But I did start to wonder, if the boot was on the other foot, how many of those people would think that Britain, right? If Britain was so low in the vaccination rollout and the EU was so high, how many people would think that we had a moral right to go to the EU? They'd be saying, oh, it's too late. This is Brexit. Welcome to the Brexit. Wasn't it take back control? Wasn't it? Take back control. Why don't you go and catch some magic fish? Why don't you use your magical sovereignty to get some vaccinations? Well, things change quickly.
What most people think.